We start the film and meet Dieter von Kunthe and his men. After a brief scuffle, they resolutely take control of a nuclear X-5 warhead. Across the world in Ecuador, Colonel Jim Faith and Lieutenant Dixon Piper are searching for former Navy SEAL, Green Beret, and Army Ranger, MacGruber. And when they find him meditating in a chapel, they ask him to take on this job and retrieve the warhead from Kunthe, which he refuses. That night, he wakes into a rage after reliving in a dream a flashback of Kunthe killing his fiancée at their wedding. Following this, he reaches out and accepts the mission. After a heated discussion with Faith and Piper in the Pentagon, MacGruber creates a list and sets out to form his team in the US to pursue Kunthe. One by one, he collects all, except for his longtime friend Vicky St. Elmo and Brick Hughes. Once everyone's together, MacGruber meets Faith and Piper on the tarmac while the team sits back in a van with his homemade C4 explosives. Just as he explains this, the explosives set off, killing everyone in the van at once. In response, Faith kicks MacGruber off the case because the game has changed and MacGruber is too close. When Piper is alone with MacGruber, he devolves into begging him to help. Piper convinces him of the fact that Kunthe killed his wife, and he softens to it. When the colonel comes back into the room, MacGruber has no pants on, and the lieutenant agrees to join the team. Faith says two people don't make a team, but Vicky shows up just in time to make them a trio. Faith approves the new lineup, and the three of them set off. The team travels to Kunthe's nightclub in Las Vegas. In the parking lot, a driver is rude to MacGruber publicly. This angers him, so he obsessively repeats the license plate number, KF8R392, until he memorizes it. Inside the nightclub, MacGruber beelines to the bar, assaulting the bartender and forcing his way on stage. He pretends to use Vicky as a hostage, but begins threatening the crowd, too. He quickly gives them away, announcing not only who he is, but his intentions and where he'll be the next day. Vicky and Piper quickly begin to freak out because MacGruber has cost them the element of surprise. Outside the club, they confront him about it because Kunthe thought that he was dead, and MacGruber reveals that he never has a plan. He just makes it up as they go. Elsewhere, Kunthe is painting in his studio, and a henchman reveals MacGruber came to the club and smashed things up with threats. This causes Kunthe some pauses as he realizes that the other man isn't dead. None of the henchmen thought he was a threat, and Kunthe reveals their history of Kunthe foiling his plan, sending a few henchmen after him. Vicky enters the sting operation, dressed as, and pretending to be, MacGruber. She's instructed on how to act and order via earpiece, which includes being rude to the barista. However, instead of Vicky as a diversion, MacGruber in Piper's van is attacked by Haas Bender, Kunthe's henchman. This causes Vicky, being streamed the attack via earpiece, to freak out in public, thinking the team is doomed. The men escape with Piper passing MacGruber a broom and MacGruber using his quick thinking to press the gas pedal and crush the attacker against a dumpster with a van. It cuts back to Vicky, crying on the floor, who's informed that they survived, leaving meekly after freaking out loudly with the room staring at her. Then Vicky disguises herself as Bender and Piper disguises herself as MacGruber. The team together attempts to break into a warehouse and stop Kunthe from getting the operation passwords for the rocket. MacGruber, stripped down, distracts the guards as Piper kills most of the men, but they can't intercept the passcode transfer before they get away. Colonel Faith calls MacGruber, informing him of Kunthe's charity event and tells him to not go into it because of his spotty track record. However, MacGruber decides to believe he tells them to sneak in and inform on who comes and goes and what leads to follow. Piper stays back while Vicky and MacGruber attend the event, which Piper expresses as a bad idea. MacGruber says they'll be keeping a low profile, but shows up in a white suit and making a scene. Piper is left alone as MacGruber loses contact and discovers his journal. Page after page of KF8R392 is revealed as the music begins to grow eerie, along with rudimentary drawings. It grows increasingly unsettling as he depicts strange acts in his art. However, rather than letting it be a red flag, Piper tosses the journal aside. Meanwhile, MacGruber finds Vicky at the event by the pool. She's begun reconnaissance and points out a handsome man who's left Kunthe's office. MacGruber is hurt by this assertion, telling her to marry him. When she says she won't do that, he instead tells her to focus on an older man elsewhere, calls the handsome man ugly, and orders her to follow him instead. Further into the event, Kunthe is gambling with politicians, and MacGruber bursts in. The politician bets against Kunthe, which was MacGruber's suggestion, and causes the man to bankrupt himself. He approaches Kunthe and the two mince words. He tries to intimidate Kunthe, of which he's mostly a failure, as Kunthe mocks him for blowing his team up instead. Kunthe doesn't break, and MacGruber talks a big game before the henchmen throw him out of a glass window. Vicky is still in the party and sees the exchange between a henchman and the senator. While she surveys, Vicky tries to keep quiet, with MacGruber on the other line growing more jealous. She succumbs and leaves, losing her eye on the senator and their lead. Angry that his henchman allowed MacGruber to embarrass him, he kills the henchman who admits it. He has another henchman get rid of the body and instructs the others to hang the bloody portrait in the foyer and kill MacGruber. Returning to the Pentagon, MacGruber is reprimanded and again taken off the case by Faith. He and Piper drink together outside his trailer, and MacGruber explains his long history with Kunth. He met Kunth and his future fiancée while the three of them were in college. Kunth was engaged to her, but she had an affair with MacGruber. Upon leaving Kunth, she was pregnant with his child, and MacGruber convinced her to abort the baby to be with him instead. During the ambush, MacGruber uses Piper as a human shield to survive and escapes with Vicky. The two believe Piper was killed in the attack, but he stays, showing them he was wearing a bulletproof vest. He commends MacGruber on his quick thinking, assuming he knew the other man was safe, only to quickly realize that MacGruber hadn't been aware of the vest at all. This causes a divide between the men, and Piper leaves the team, realizing how unhinged and selfish MacGruber really is. Vicky realizes that MacGruber has been shot in the leg and takes him back to her house to remove the bullet. Once she patches him up, she confesses her love to him and admits that she's a virgin. The two of them have long, drawn-out after which MacGruber panics and runs out. He arrives at his dead bride's grave and confesses his guilt. She appears as a ghost to him, giving her blessing for him to move on from her death and fall in love with Vicky. The two of them seemingly have on her tombstone, only for the camera to pan back and realize that the ghost isn't really there and MacGruber is by himself. Back in Vicky's place, MacGruber realizes that Kunth has kidnapped her, and he plans to blow up Congress during the State of the Union. MacGruber calls Colonel Faith to inform him of his plan, but then MacGruber finds a car parked outside. The vehicle has the license plate KFB R392, which triggers MacGruber into vandalizing the man's car. He returns, only to notice the damage to his car, and MacGruber escapes. Kunth calls MacGruber to gloat, but this gives MacGruber the chance to trace the call back and figure out where to find Kunth. Piper agrees to help with one last mission, despite how they left things last time. They make their way onto Kunth's compound and are quickly captured and taken to Kunth, Vicky, and the missile. They fight, pounding Kunth and his henchmen into submission, and MacGruber handcuffs Kunth to a handrail. Removing the warhead and guidance system, the team and Vicky escape right as the missile detonates. Kunth escapes using an axe to chop through his handcuffed hand in the nick of time. 6 months pass and MacGruber and Vicky are set to get married. At the wedding, MacGruber's dead team members all attend as ghosts. Mirroring the flashback wedding he was set to have with his dead fiancée, MacGruber turns and sees Kunth with an RPG. Vicky is saved by MacGruber, leaving the men to battle it out. The screen behind their altar tears, and MacGruber throws the villain off the cliff behind it, shooting him with a machine gun and throwing a grenade after him in midair, which incinerates the corpse in one final act of defiance. MacGruber urinates on it from the top of the cliff, finally defeating his arch nemesis. And that's gonna wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this recap as much as we did. If you liked the video and want to look into other movies with us, click the like button and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on. That way, you won't miss a single video.